Hi folks, thanks for joining us today. Right, today me and Nathan are just going to explore, well, probably one of the biggest things I think in life, and something that certainly many of us choose to ignore. And this is the whole idea of overwhelm.
Wow.
I'm going to pass over to you, Nathan, to kind of kick this one off.
Yeah, so the reason why we wanted to talk about this because I think many of us, well, certainly me and Andy, perhaps we're the only two, but I'm sure there must be someone else out there. We experience from time to time this kind of sense that there's just too much going on. There's just too much going on. And I think we both struggle, and I do tell me if I'm speaking out of turn, Andy, we both struggle with that kind of fear that we don't want to let stuff go because actually we're scared we might miss opportunities. But at the same time, we're running a very fine balancing act between work and play and family. And sometimes there's just too much happening and it's just too much. And then on top of all that stuff that you're doing, something big comes and completely knocks you for six.
Yeah.
And I mean, without sharing too much detail, for me, that's about people I care about having massive life traumatic situations happening in that mix.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, how do I carve out of this space where I've got no time so that I can actually be present and turn up for people in that? So
mine's probably not got quite the same gravity, but then maybe I'm just kind of not acknowledging some of the issues that might be around it within that space. And I think it's so important to take stock of where you're at, and as much as I think the second that the overwhelm starts to creep in, you've got to also try to counter it by saying, actually, what are all the good stuff that you've managed to do here? Look at all the positives. There's definitely a lot of value in that. I see anyway. It certainly helps me a lot. But I think the other thing is to just not fall into that trap of starting to overthink it. So the second that it feels like there's a lot going on, and then you start maybe creating lots of lists, writing a series of post-it notes, whatever it might be that you think is actually being helpful and maybe it's going to be an aid memoir, can actually be the thing that's kind of going to take you over the edge, because suddenly you've got this massive sheet of paper or all these post-it notes in front of you that are saying, screaming at you, got to do this, got to do that, got to do the other. Whereas I guess it's a process. You've probably got to do those things, but then what you've got to say is, right, this is the time I've got. And be realistic, really realistic about what that time is, because if you just try to bookend things, it's just simply not going to work. You've got to give yourself some space, some migration space from activity to activity. And I think it's recognizing in yourself when that's happening and saying, right, I can see where this is going, and what are the processes that I need to go through to.
And I think a bit of that as well, Andy, I'd pick up on and say, I don't know if you guys, is having a bit of a plan for what you're going to do when it happens, because so often this stuff sneaks up on us, and then it's the hardest thing to do is to plan your escape when you're in the problem. I'm always think back to, I mean, I love a good SAS novel, but I can really get that sense with those guys. Well, I know it's true. They practice so that when it goes horribly wrong, they already know what they're going to do. I mean, there's that famous film, Who Dares Wins? I think it's back in the 70s or something. I remember watching these guys practice, and then they kind of do it at the end. And you just get that real sense of, and that's what we're called to do, actually, to be quite clear about what's our plan.
Yeah, I think, and having that self-awareness to not disasterize. So something maybe hasn't gone 100% to plan, but it's not a disaster. And making sure you don't fall into that rabbit hole. Or if you do, saying, what am I doing? This isn't helpful. And I think that's the thing, is kind of sense checking with yourself. Is this helpful? Is this actually, back to your point about a plan, you've got to have a routine, some go-to things that are going to give you that perspective, I think, to sort of stop looking inwards and start thinking, no, I've got this, I've done this before, it can be achieved. And
the other bit here, which we probably haven't touched on, is obviously if you're looking inwards and you're having these self conversations, the best way to change that is to talk to someone else about it, get some perspective. One of the things that me and Andy, how we met actually, was through a business group called the Drive Partnership, and which has been fantastic. But that's all about connecting and saying, well, actually, things seem terrible, and someone else saying, well, actually, look at all this cool stuff you're doing. and yeah, that stuff is terrible, but there's loads of good things going on. Let's work together to move forwards.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And you know, we'd love to hear what other people do, and things that you've used or are using and found useful in terms of managing that sense of overwhelm. Equally, you know, if you want to reach out and you're looking for somebody to kind of give you some support and ideas, then we're happy to take this discussion further. So please comment and tell us what it is you'd like to know a bit more about.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Cheers, Nathan.